I now hand the conference over to Mr. Vishal Chandak from DAM Capital Advisors Limited. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Malika. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Q1 FY22 earnings call for Jindal Stainless and Jindal Stainless Hisar. I'd like to thank Mr. Jindal and Mr. Anurag Mantri for providing us with this opportunity to host them again for this conference call. So for today's call, we have with us Mr. Abhyuday Jindal, Group CFO, Mr. Anurag Mantri, CFO of JSHL, Mr. Ramnik Gupta, Head IR, Mr. Gautam, and Ms. Shreya. So without much ado, I hand over the floor to Gautam. Over to you, Gautam.
Yeah, thanks, Vishal. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll begin this call with the brief opening remarks from our MD and the Group CFO, following which we'll have the forum open for an interactive question and answer session. Before we start, I would like to point out that some of the statements made in today's call may be forward-looking in nature, and a disclaimer to this effect has been included in the results presentation that was shared earlier. Now I'd like to invite our MD, Mr. Abhyuday Jindal, to make his opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Gautam and Vishal, and good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the management team of Jindal Stainless Limited and Jindal Stainless Hisar Limited, I welcome you to this forum. I wish safety and well-being to you and your dear ones in these challenging times. First, I would like to share the key highlights of Q1 FY22, following which Anurag will take you through the operational and financial highlights. At the beginning, I'm excited to announce the next phase of our growth journey. We are doubling our stainless steel melt capacity through brownfield expansion from 1.1 million tons to 2.1 million tons at Jajpur, which is expected to start in the next 18 months. This expansion will be less than one-third of the greenfield project cost. The three-pronged expansion plan constitutes expansion of melting capacity, commensurate strengthening of backward and forward linkages. The estimated cost of our expansion is around 2,150 crores. In Hisar, we plan to leverage our leadership position by expanding our specialty product division, thereby strengthening product mix. Estimated cost of expansion, capex is around 450 crores, which includes previously announced rupees 190 crore for our precision strips. The 3x expansion of precision strip will strengthen the company's presence in segments such as auto, process industries, oil and gas, and also cater to niche segments like aerospace and electrical vehicles. The blade steel expansion by 1.7x will help us in consolidating our leadership position both in domestic as well as export markets. I would like to mention about our initiatives to fight COVID. As a group, we have supplied over 6,000 metric tons of liquid medical oxygen to hospitals across Haryana, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh and Delhi. We have offered free vaccination to over 35,000 employees and families. We are also operating a 500-bedded COVID emergency hospital in Hisar, and our Jajpur facility has supplied over 50 metric ton LMO on a daily basis to Odisha, Andhra Pradesh and other nearby states. We are committed to extending any possible help to our employees and the community at large in fight against COVID, along with our various social initiatives, and we are already geared up for any wave 3 or wave 4 expected. As a responsible corporate citizen, we are also focused on sustainability and maintaining healthy environment. Operating through EAF helps us in reducing our carbon footprint. Increasing the recycled content share is the single most effective measure to reduce our environmental impact. This ensures considerable reduction in CO2 emissions across supply chain. As an acknowledgement, numerous awards received by both JSL and JSHL are testimony to our efforts on the environment, health and safety front. Our merger is progressing well, and as informed earlier, we have already filed our application with NCLT. We are in the process of getting requisite approvals. The overall process is likely to be completed in the second half of this financial year. Post the strong recovery seen during the last 9 months of the previous fiscal year, This year also started with a positive sentiment. With some initial adverse impacts of state-wide lockdowns, demand in key segments like auto, pipe and tube, railways and special grades started to stabilize towards the end of the quarter. Our operational performance during Q1 FY22 improved on account of better product mix and efficient cost management. Key raw material price trend remained strong in QY FY22 as well. I am happy that the credit rating for both the companies improved to A+ as a result of accretion from prudent financial management and focused deleveraging. On the import front, after the suspension of CVD in the Union Budget in February this year, share of imports in the domestic market increased to 34% against 24% in Q4 FY21. Domestic industry is pursuing its case on a level playing field with government continuously. Overall, the outlook of stainless steel demand remains robust on the back of faster vaccination drive, improvement in availability of liquidity, and overall economic recovery spurred by improved business sentiments and infrastructure stimulus supported by the government. With this, I would like to hand over to Anurag to discuss the operational and financial performances. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhyuday. Good afternoon and warm welcome to everyone joining us on call today. We have shared our investor presentation with the stock exchanges and I hope you have already gone through the same. As Abhyuday mentioned that despite the localized and state-wise lockdown, our performance has been robust in Q1 FY22. Let me now discuss the overall performance of the proposed combined entity first and then I will discuss our other key developments. On the back of our flexible business strategy, we have increased our share of export sales to cover the temporary challenges in domestic market in Q1 FY22. Our constant efforts to improve the sales and product mix backed by agile supply chain helped us in proactively capturing the high quality product segment in India as well as in niche export segment in Europe, Russia and US. As you all know, Q1 FY21 was impacted severely by COVID. Therefore, I am not comparing our Q1 FY22 pro forma performance on YOY basis because then it is not a right comparison to make. However, on a sequential basis too, the pro forma combined entity EBITDA of rupees 964.5 crore is up by 9% on a TTM basis. On a TTM basis, the pro forma standalone combined revenue grew by 22% over FY21 number to rupees 23,439 crore. TTM basis, the EBITDA rose by 35% to rupees 3,256 crore, while PBT grew by 79% to rupees 2,146 crores. With consistent focus and accelerated deleveraging, we have reduced our debt by more than 30% since the onset of pandemic in March 20. The pro forma standalone net of the combined entity now stands at rupees 2,739 crore at the end of Q1 FY22. This is down by rupees 400 crore as against the March 21 number. As a result, our gearing ratios have improved further. The pro forma debt equity ratio now stands at around 0.4x, while the pro forma debt EBITDA ratios now falls below 1 at 0.8x. Our focus on maintaining a strong balance sheet will continue going forward as mentioned by Abhyuday. I am pleased to share that both the entities rating agencies have been upgraded and JSL and JSHL now both are into A+ category. During the previous call, we informed about the CRISIL upgrade. Now, Fitch India Rating has also upgraded the JSL's long-term rating to 3 levels from BBB+ to straight away to A+. Accelerated deleveraging, prepayments of debt along with the strong operational performance were key reasons for this upgrade. Regarding the merger process, we had already informed you that after obtaining the necessary approval from Stock Exchange and SEBI, company has filed the first motion application before NCLT and we are awaiting hearing on this. Now, let me just elaborate the expansion plan which Abhyuday just outlined. We are going to double our melt capacity at Jajpur and further strengthening backward and forward and backward integration by leveraging our world-class Jajpur infra. Estimated project cost is envisaged at 2,150 crore, which, as Abhyuday mentioned, is less than one-third of the greenfield project cost of similar nature. SMS, in this process, their SMS capacity will be doubled at an estimated cost of rupees 530 crore by Q3 FY23. On a downstream side, combo line, which is HRAP capacity, and will go up by 1.6x to 1.25 MTPA, and CRAP capacity will increase 1.7x to 1.75 metric ton. This will be done at estimated cost of 1,250 crore rupees by Q4 FY23. As far as backward integration is concerned, we plan to spend rupees 315 crore to take ferrochrome capacity from 0.25 to 0.35 metric ton per annum by Q3 FY24. We also intend to spend balance amount to quality lab and some of the balance of plant to aim to enhance quality assurance for new generation grades in high-end segment and also to improve serviceability for better customer experience. Coming to JSHL, which consists of with consistent focus on value-added specialty products, we are expanding our precision strip capacity by 3x to 60,000 metric ton per annum in two phases. Phase 1 by Q2 FY22 and Phase 2 by Q4 FY23. This will be done at an estimated cost of rupees 250 crore, which includes 190 crore for Phase 1, which we have already announced earlier. This will be done, once this is done, this will take our global market share from less than 3% currently to over 8% in precision strip segment. This will also help us in targeting niche segment like aerospace and EV, as mentioned by Abhyuday. As you know, we are the largest blade steel producer globally. To further consolidate our position, we are expanding our blade steel capacity by 1.7x to 24,000 ton per annum at an estimated cost of rupees 200 crore. The project is also going to be completed by Q4 FY24. Put together, the cash outflow from these capex will be split largely into FY22 and FY23, approximate 1100 crore each year. Therefore, as this merger is going to complete, we have laid our next level of growth plan, and with consistent focus on balance sheet, with a strong stainless demand across various segments, we will be ready with our wide product basket and value-added products to cater to that. This brings me to end of my address. I would now expect moderator to open the line for the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Amit Dixit from Edelweiss. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. Thanks a lot for taking my questions and congratulations for a very good performance in a COVID hit quarter. I have three questions. I have three questions if I may. The first one is on your capex plan, since you are also augmenting HRAP and cold rolled anneal product capacity. So what kind of incremental EBITDA per ton would you expect from these? From your enhanced capacity, say in FY24?
See, Amit, overall, we would like to guide on the overall payback period for these capacities. What, as per our estimate currently, the payback of these facilities will be less than 3 years. So maybe on a specific EBITDA per ton, I think let's wait for as we go near to the start of the facilities, because we'll have to see the ramp up. But overall, we are confident of payback of less than 3 years.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. The second question is on the stainless steel industry as it is. If you look at the stainless steel prices in China, they have gone up almost 10% from a very high level in the month of July. And our guidance, of course, we have outperformed our guidance consecutively for 3 quarters. In light of the prices remaining much higher at the present stage, and the fact that China has increased export tax on ferrochrome, and nickel prices we know are like almost in a wildfire kind of situation. So stainless steel fundamentals look good. So all in all, what kind of guidance would you maintain for rest of the year in terms of your profitability, EBITDA per ton?
So, Amit, because based on just 1 quarter and we are just beginning of the financial year, right now what we do is that our full year guidance for the FY22, we are upping from our earlier guidance. If you recall, last call we gave a 15 to 17,000 EBITDA per ton. Now, looking at the scenario, we are upping it to 18 to 20,000 per ton on an average basis for both the entities consolidated one. Now, your question whether looking all the good, I think we will be keep updating and will be very transparently sharing with you and we are now regularly interacting on a quarterly basis. When we see when we move ahead in the more on the financial year, we'll see how the various events unfold, and then we will see how whether we need to revise these guidance further. One thing I want to make sure that if you recall, even at the last year when there was a nationwide lockdown, whatever guidance we gave before that, even we didn't give any excuse to the external situation, and we make sure that those guidance were met even when the scenario was looking very bad. But we are hopeful of the full year basis. So considering the various external factors which may right now look good, may not look good after some time, but what we are seeing is that we are confident of 18 to 20,000 per ton at this moment for the full year basis.
And this you are guiding for the merged, considering the merged entity.
Yes.
Both together, JSHL and JSL. Okay, great. The third question, if I may, is on the, we have recently executed a MOU with Tata Steel on chrome mining. So just wanted to, these are still initial days, I know, but just wanted to understand the kind of benefit in terms of ore production, the cost benefit that you would get for your ferrochrome business on this.
So yes, Amit, like you said, it's still early stages, but the basic idea is that there was a good amount of reserve, almost close to 1 million tons of chrome ore is available in the boundary, at the joint boundary between Tata and our mine. So the idea is that because right now, we were buying our chrome ore either from OMC, from Tata, or even importing some ore, and we were not consuming the ore available within our mine. So, once that starts happening, there will be tremendous impact on the cost. Right now, it's really tough to say because, yes, prices of chrome ore are also rising, and mining has been closed for the last 2 years. So that is why it's tough to give any monetary details as of now. But we know that there is tremendous amount of ore available. In the next 5 years, we want to mine this, 1 million ton reserves that is available to us.
Can I ask a follow-up on this?
Yes.
Okay. So just wanted to understand, because 1 million ton, in overall context, then your capacity, ferrochrome capacity will increase to 350 KT. And as I understand, you would require roughly 2.3 for 1 ton of ferrochrome. So, 1 million ton is really not enough. So do you expect, that there would be more ore available that you might not have explored, but given this MOU, you would like to explore? So, you must be seeing some higher opportunity than this 1 million ton.
This is what we already know is clearly visible. Then further, once we start excavating, then we are expecting a lot more minerals to be found. And we do have plans which are not put in place right now, but we're still talking on going for underground mining as well. So when we go for underground, there is enough capacity available for us.
And what are the timelines for this? Sorry, I think you mentioned, but I missed this. The timelines?
For the Tata mining, you're asking?
Yeah.
Tata mining, we expect by Q4 of this financial year to get that started.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks a lot and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sumangal Nevatia from Kotak Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon and thanks for the opportunity. Congratulations to the team on the excellent operating performance. First question is on the expansion plan, which you detailed quite well. Just want to understand with the new capacity, what should be the volume ramp up, and in how many years should we take ramp up very high capacity utilization starting end of FY23?
Sumangal, we are expecting the full ramp up of the capacities by FY25. So within, say, because it will be starting end of this Q2 23, and ramp up will then gradually. So 100% ramp up of most of the capacities we are expecting to complete by 25.
Understood. And will it be fair to expect that the new capacity, the fixed cost and the conversion cost efficiency would be much better than the existing capacity?
Yes, absolutely. Because, the way the plant is planned out, and then we will be consuming more of our liquid ferrochrome as well. So definitely it will bring us sort of improvement in our cost efficiency.
Understood. A second question is with respect to this Chromore mine with Tata. Just want to clarify, this 1 million ton is our share or it's the total share? And whenever we start producing, you said
1 million ton is our share.
Got it. And what could be the production, annual production out of this 1 million ton reserve? In how many years can we produce that?
It will take about 5 years. And we have a capacity to produce almost 24,000 tons in a month. So that is the limit that we are at. Maybe we can go for some conversion outside also. And we're also looking to increase our ferrochrome capacity as well. So as of now, we can do about 24,000 tons a month, maybe 24 to 26, I would say. And it will take about 5 years to consume this 1 million tons.
Understood. And our mining costs with royalty, etc., is it fair as on today it would be somewhere around $70-80 per ton?
See, because like I said, mining has been closed for last 2 years for us, so it is a little tough to give that number. But we don't have any premium that we need to pay because this mine we did not buy an auction, we got it before. So royalty will be there, but there is no premium that we need to pay that other miners are requiring to do right now.
Got it. That's very clear. Just one last question on the overall industry. This recent increase in ferrochrome export tax in China, how do you see this impacting chrome ore prices, ferrochrome, and then translating into stainless steel? And how do you see this impacting us?
So we definitely see that the ferrochrome price should go up because there is some supply issue from South Africa as well. And like you said, the export duty has come on China. So we expect these commodity prices to go up. I think in terms of our customers, because it is passed through for us, we should not see any negative impact on the company at all.
Got it. This is very helpful. Thank you and all the best, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Apurva Shah from Phillip Capital. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And congratulations to the team for the fabulous performance. So my first question is on the industry side. So can you share some quantitative data? Because if I look at your current press release where you have mentioned that the import has increased to 34%. So can you just throw some light on what is the exact number of import and what will be the average utilization for the domestic producers?
As an industry as a whole, you're asking. So yes, if I talk about domestic industry, other than Jindal Stainless, it is not a very promising situation. And this is only due to the imports that are coming in. We have on average in the last 3 months, if I can say, almost between 50 to 60,000 tons of stainless steel is coming mainly from China, Indonesia as always. And that is creating an impact because these are coming in the low end segments where Jindal Stainless does not or has a very, very small market share. They don't come in the segments in our process industries, in railways, very limited in auto, but more in the hollowware, utensils, These are the areas, low-end markets. So that is where maximum of the producers are getting impacted. If you ask at the industry level, I think industry is operating at maybe 65% capacity utilization.
Great. So, sir, the reason why I'm asking is we are just doubling our capacity from 1.1 to 2.1. So what will be our plan? So does it also mean that we will be looking for higher sales in export market, looking at the current China situation, and at combined entity from 85-15, so 85 domestic and 15 export roughly numbers, maybe 3 years down the line the ratio can be different. So what is your strategy to utilize this 1 million ton incremental capacity?
Strategy is always to grow the domestic market and maintain our market share on the domestic front, which you said very rightly that it has been around 85 to 15%. We are very flexible because we participate in the highest end market from our export side, and looking at the facilities and the number of grades we operate in, we are very flexible. So depending on the nature, how we expect actually domestic industry to grow at 8 to 9% over the next 3 years. So again, maximum of our capacities will be sold in domestic market. I think the ratio will still remain. You can take a range between 75 to 85% domestic market and about 15 to 25% export market. But we are very flexible to switch if required.
Yeah. So, Sumangal, as Vijay mentioned, is that this flexibility which we have built in our entire business model is so like last quarter is the best. Again we have done it in actually every quarter in last 5-6 quarters. You would have seen we have really moved these geographical breakup as well as the segment wise, depending on where we are getting the best price and best outcome of our product. So like when Q1 some of the state-wise lockdown was there, we immediately increased our export. And just to again reiterate at the cost of again repeating it, we are exporting only to a European, US and Russia. Okay, so it's a very, very quality segment. We are approved supplier for most of these buyers. So we have a greater flexibility how we plan out. So that's why we are confident this ramp up will be by FY21, and we don't have any challenges. We are not seeing any challenges as of now on this.
Great, sir. Thanks for the clarification. So my second question is on the specialty product division of JSHL. So can you share some economics for this division, and looking at the current capex of 450 crores, what can be the maximum revenue can generate from this segment? So maybe currently 7 to 8% of the total revenue. How much portion we can reach in maybe FY 24-25?
So, Sumangal, you rightly mentioned about that. So, in terms of the total quantity, what we sold it, so it contributes around 6% in terms of the quantity, and if I look at the value-wise, that's 12%. So, when we will be doing these expansions over the period of next 2 years, so that percentage will increase, and that is what our focus, that we contribute more from this value-added product from the Hisar plants. So that focus will be there, and this delta will increase also. So I will say that in terms of the quantity, if I maintain the same capacity utilization right now what we are doing, so on that average percentage, so this percentage will go slightly increase from 6% to in the range of 8 to 10%, I will say. And in terms of the value wise also, in looking at the market price at the current market price, so this range of 12% will go also increase to 15 to 18% in that range, which will help us to maintain our EBITDA margin as well as the EBITDA margin.
So this 450 crores of capex, how much revenue we can expect, and do you share what kind of realizations or margin we can expect from this division?
So Sumangal, which I mentioned about.
So this is Apurva from Phillip Capital.
Yeah, Apurva, sorry, I'm sorry. Apurva, right now which I discussed with you, that if I talk about the current situation, so it is 6% in terms of the quantity and 12% of the value wise. So on that ratio, when we will do the expansion after 2 years, so in the same trend that percentage will increase at that period. And in terms of that, you're asking about the payback period, so it will be less than 24 months we will achieve that payback period over the next 2 years.
Okay, great. Thank you very much and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The The next question is from the line of Rajesh Majumdar from B&K Securities. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon everyone, and thanks for taking my call. Congratulations, of course, on the very healthy set of numbers. So, sir, I had two questions on the scrap side of the trade. Actually, both are related. The first question is when you give a guidance of 18 to 20,000 rupees per ton, what is the kind of product price fall you built in terms of the actual price, finished product price fall when you say 18 to 20K? Hello?
Sorry, just 1 second. You are asking about the different series price mix?
Yeah, I'm saying when you give a guidance of 18 to 20,000 as compared to the ruling rate of 24 to 25, what's the kind of product price fall on an average you take when you give this guidance?
So, Rajesh, here I would like to again reiterate that it's not, and we should always again differentiate. We are into very different business than carbon steel. I must say that. So it's not at the product range price, and we have also luxury that we have 120 plus product range to cater to each and every product side as well as the segment side. What we endeavor to do is that to improve, optimize the EBITDA per ton for the benefit of all the shareholders. The product mix, whether between export, domestic, between auto, railway, industrial fabrication process, pharma, dairy, we remain flexible wherever we can capture the best of the product range, because we have an entire manufacturing process also very agile. So I would say that it's difficult to give you, because it's not that we will suppose we do more of 400 series in this mix. The average price will then fall, but your EBITDA, absolute EBITDA will still increase. So it's
right, I understand that. I understand, but say a constant mix is like, what is the assumption behind this guidance? I'm interested to get at that. What is the assumption that you have reduced your guidance, say, from the current rate? Is it just being conservative, or is there some calculation behind this? That's all that I want to know.
No, so there is a based on the various segment which we see, because some segments also have a cyclicity. So overall, on a full year basis, we take certain mix expectation of the mix. But having said that, let me give you the rider. In last 12 months, those mix have always changed. So like when we were expecting some, say, specific 300 series to be sold, suddenly the 400 series offtake increase. Last quarter, 300 series offtake increase. So these are very dynamically moving markets at this point of time, especially when localized in domestic as well as international lockdowns, logistic challenges happen. So therefore, what I think is that to have the full tonnage, keep the plant at fully utilized, and move more focus on the EBITDA per ton. So it's not that we suppose we are targeting, say, average selling price, average realization today, say we are running at 1,60,000. I'm not saying that we will only continue to run at 1,60,000. We may come down to this, but our EBITDA may still not come down. So therefore, this question itself, I don't want to have too much of focus on this, because still completely different product segment altogether.
No, so if I put it in a different way, is the lower guidance dependent on the market conditions more than the price then? Is that the way you're looking at it?
It's because of the overall market segmentation. It's because of the market segmentation, because if you talk, like Anurag was mentioning, 400 series, auto was down in this quarter. You know, so if once that picks up and then the hollow ware segment picks up, then there could be a little price correction. You know, so it totally depends on the market segment that we want to target. But like we said, we will definitely maintain our margins. We want to maintain our ratios, which is why we are in a very flexible model. You can switch between our series, between segments. So it's totally as per company strategy.
Got it, sir. Got it. Thank you. So, and my second question was relating to the scrap market. So we've been increasing our SS scrap consumption over the years. How confident are we going forward that we will be getting this kind of scrap availability, and whether this will go up more over the years?
Absolutely. There are a lot of things that we have put in place. So one thing that I would like to add is that we have or plans to set up 2-3 yards in the international market where we do our own sourcing at a very cheap price to bring in our own scrap. Secondly, we are getting and we're pushing our domestic suppliers to source more material, looking at our requirements, and also going into a value and use model where they create yards next to the factory and we pay them as and when we consume the material. So this we already did with 2 suppliers, Trafigura and MM Ceramic, and we're also working with many other scrap suppliers to do the similar kind of concept. And currently, because of the logistic issues, scrap ratio is a little down, but over time, over this year, we will get back to our almost 80% scrap ratio, and every year you will see an uptick in that.
Okay, because recently we've seen a deal in the SS scrap market in Europe, which was at a pretty significantly high valuation. So it seems that the acquisition of a scrap player may make sense. Because Aperam has bought out the stainless steel scrap merchant at 7 times valuation, EV/EBITDA valuation. So I was just wondering whether we have any plans to move upstream.
That is why we are actually, the plan that we put in is actually moving away from our European and American suppliers. So maximum of the sourcing is now domestic and nearby countries like Southeast Asia and Middle East as well. So that way, looking at the kind of plans European makers have, we, as a strategic reason which has worked very well, we have moved away from European suppliers. Now our dependence on them is not more than 15 to 20%.
Right. So we're fairly confident of our SS scrap availability improving over the years. So you see that kind of scrap being generated in the region.
Absolutely, because as the consumption is picking up, which also we are witnessing, scrap generation will also improve. Plus, looking at our expansion plans, we've already in discussion with all our major suppliers of sourcing more scrap domestically and from nearby sources. So we are very confident on our sourcing front.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please limit your questions to 2 per participant. Should you have a follow-up question, would request you to rejoin the queue. The next question is from the line of Abhishek Modi from Emkay Global Financial Services. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. My question pertains to the PLI scheme. Since the combined entity is into stainless steel, so any plans going ahead with PLI into account for the company, the combined level?
So, we are representing and working with the government to get some PLI scheme for stainless steel as well, but currently the scheme is come more for carbon steel players. So direct benefit we will not get, but we are already representing and working with the government to bring in some for stainless steel as well.
Okay, so current is not flexible for the company, you're telling that way?
No, currently we will not be, or we are still working on certain grades, but maximum benefit will come to carbon steel players.
Okay, thanks for taking my question.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Ashish Kejriwal from Centrum Broking. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Good evening, everyone. Sir, my question is on the EBITDA per ton bridge. If I look at FY20, we are somewhere around 13,000, and now we are at 24,000. So my question is it possible for you to break it into different parts in quantitative terms, roughly, how we have moved from this 13 to 24? And, what kind of sustainability we look at? Because, every quarter we are changing our guidance, but more or less now we are behaving like carbon steel. So, stainless steel is no more the way it used to be earlier. So my question is only that, how can you break from 13 to 24,000?
So see, this is a very complicated question and there is no straightforward answer. Over last 2 to 3 years, there have been a lot of changes, a lot of improvements, advances in the whole world. Pandemic has come. All countries that you see have announced huge infrastructure spends. China is now stopping their own players from exporting because they see good demand and they see requirement within their own country. Commodity prices have all risen over the last 2 years. They've been on an uptick. So there are multiple areas. Plus, the company has worked tremendously on cost efficiency, domestic sourcing, improving our cash flows, reducing our interest rate. So there have been a bunch of factors. I know interest rate will not impact our margins, but there are a bunch of areas, a mix of areas that the company has worked on, plus external factors that have led us to reach a EBITDA margin of almost 24,000 tons. So I don't know, Anurag, if you can answer better, but there is no straightforward answer to say that this has happened, which is why 24,000 tons have been achieved.
The main thing is,
Yeah, go ahead, Ashish.
because no, when I'm looking at below gross margin, cost is more or less the same what it used to be in FY20. So the entire increase, according to the numbers which we have been seeing, is because of improvement in gross margin. So whatever company is doing, that's not reflecting as such in the operating expenditure except for the gross margin. So my only question is whether it's all macro driven or something which we can see in the numbers also.
Yeah. So Ashish, let me just correct the right understanding, and again I'm repeating it what I replied to the previously. The gross margin, if you recall, is a question of the raw material prices, right, underlying. The 300 series gross margin is way lesser than the 400 series gross margin because the nickel is not there in 400 series. The gross margin will be much higher in 400 series, right? I think therefore this comparison of doing like a very vanilla type with the carbon steel player is not right, or maybe any other metal, because if we sell more 400 series, the gross margin will look pretty high, but we are still guiding. Therefore, I think for ease of purpose, I think what we are saying, you leave us that flexibility to capture the best margin, best product range at that particular point of time. And it's difficult to predict, and we have seen most of the even what our prediction was there, if you put up in Jan 19 before getting into the pandemic for auto, have completely proved wrong. Because when we opened in after the first lockdown, suddenly we saw a two-wheeler auto segment demand rose to a large extent, and we supplied most of our quantities because of this fuel tank of two-wheelers. We pushed large quantities in the auto because we were getting the right price benchmarks also over there. So this is very difficult to predict on those terms because in these uncertain times. What we have done is that, as Abhyuday mentioned, I'm not getting into the external factor how it's paying out because it's very difficult to predict those. Again, I'm repeating it. But we have made our business model so flexible. So let me give you a few data points. On November 19, we increased our Jajpur capacity by 35% from 0.8 to 1.1 with a just cost of 40 crores. What it means, then it helps us to enhance our product range. So with this, after this, as well as the combining with Hisar, we now can cater to each and every product range segments into stainless steel industry. Probably we are one of the only company in the world who have 120 plus stainless steel product range. So that gives us a huge flexibility to shift over this between the product range and the segment. This is one, but this is also not going to give the result till the time you have a manufacturing facility and supply chain completely agile to that. So that, as Abhyuday mentioned, we have shifted our entire supply chain work extensively with the supplier to bring down the near to our capacities. Now what happens is, suppose suddenly there is a 300 series requirement increase last quarter. What it means, we have to increase the nickel sourcing at that point of time. That is not possible if we were still buying with the 2 years previous model of the US and Canada show. Now we would immediately increase because we actually work on this specifically on these stars. So I think the performance, it's not akin to this. I think it's a combination, as Abhyuday mentioned, is that we have consistently worked on these parts that to have a very flexible product mix and to support that product mix, what is getting demanded in the particular market or particular segment, to immediately change our manufacturing lines as well as the supply chain aligned to that, so that we can cater to the best, optimize the margins overall.
And just to answer your question specifically, see, that is why we are not coming out with a statement saying that we will achieve 24,000 ton average EBITDA for this year. We do realize there are certain macroeconomic factors that have supported this. which is why, with our flexibility in mind and the kind of switch we can do between domestic and export, we still feel 18 to 20 is definitely achievable even going forward. That is the reason why we're not also claiming that 24,000 is what we can achieve this whole year. So there are a lot of domestic factors. I mean, in-house what we have done to ensure that we achieve 20,000 EBITDA. Plus, there are certain macroeconomic factors which have also supported the business and any metal company at this stage right now.
Understood, sir. So because of my only worry is that, can we go back to 13 to 15, which we are claiming 1 year back? Because obviously macro factors are supported right now. We don't know 1 year down the line whether that will same or that will change.
Not with the processes that we have put in place. Should we fall back to such a low level, it can definitely reduce. I will not say if now commodity crashes, then our margins will come down, but not to that extent.
See, the situation has that earlier the capacity was much less. So with the increased capacity, the cost efficiency optimization also come in the wider product range. So when you are talking, then time we were having only 0.8 million ton capacity in Jajpur largely. I'm not taking the period of like nationwide lockdown in Q1 of FY21. This is not a comparable period.
No, so that's what I'm saying. Means whatever improvement we have seen in gross margin rather than in other expenses which can be lower because of higher production. So
gross margin is again not the benchmark for the stainless steel industry to look at because of it will vary considerably with the change, and higher gross margin doesn't mean higher EBITDA per ton. It could be vice versa.
And sir, second is what assumptions we have made while saying that payback period of less than 3 years. Any range of EBITDA per ton which we have thought of before giving this payback period?
Less than what we are guiding, much less than what we are guiding. For our internal purposes, this payback which we have come, it's much less than what we have guided.
So is it 13 to 15?
I would not like to put number. It's much way less than what we have been guiding because all our internal planning has to be on very robust basis.
Also, because every quarter we are changing our guidance upwards, and obviously this is positive for market, but it's difficult for us to estimate in a broader range also, and that's why, because earlier we were looking at stainless steel as more of a conversion and value addition, but it's behaving like a commodity now. That is the main issue. Anyway, and last
combination, as Abhiday mentioned, it's not really there is some commodity play which is coming. It's not a commodity play. It's basically because of raw material increases. There are certain because people go in a buying speed. There is more of the inventory holding and starts happening at the distributor level. There are obviously certain positive side of the inventory valuation which starts reflecting. That's part of it, but largely it's more because of part of it. So it's a combination. Therefore, we are not guiding what we are right now earning. So it's not that, and it's difficult, as you may appreciate, it's difficult to have a benchmark like this stainless steel because the product range is very, very different.
Understood. And sir, when can we have our tax cash outflow?
We will have at March 18th, tax outflow is probably this FY22, somewhere in FY22 we should have hit that number.
Sure. Thanks and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Devin Sangvi from ICICI Direct. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir, and congrats on a very good set of numbers. I have a couple of questions. So firstly, can you throw some light in the trend in prices of key inputs currently versus Q1? Something like electrode pricing or a ferrochrome pricing?
So steel imports actually, we are still seeing, like I said, at an average of around 50,000 tons that are coming in month on month, last 4 months.
Yes, sir, I was asking the key input like electrode pricing and ferrochrome pricing. What was in?
So if you talk about the electrode price, so if I talk about the last year when you're talking about the same quarter, it was around 250 range, that part. So if I talk about the current status as on date, so it is also hovering around at the 257. So if I talk about the nickel, so it was the last year, it was at the the low base level. At that time, it was around $12,000 per ton. So now as of the June, it was 17,000. But if I talk to today's situation, so it is hovering around 19,000 plus.
Right.
Prices have gone a little higher, but that has not impacted us from a margin perspective.
Right, sir. And if I look at the stainless steel prices in China, they have gone up from June quarter also. So are the current prices higher than the Q4 or Q4 exit in this case? For the Q1 exit, my mistake.
So, we rather talk on averages rather than quarter on quarter, which is why we still are sticking that 18 to 20 on a average for the whole year, we will definitely achieve.
Right, sir. And was there any inventory gain in Q1?
See, this as Abhidha mentioned, is this inventory valuation positive or negative side? This could be there partially, but we have actually reduced our entire inventory cycle.
Yes.
So that is actually now on a long run, it's not going to impact too much, because earlier, so we are now monitoring on a almost a daily basis or weekly basis say suppose for any material, any inventory, say nickel in and nickel out, whatever we are selling and what we are quantitating. Most of now the transit time is also reduced. The price which we are buying is almost on a real time basis now with most of the suppliers. So our risk to that has considerably reduced. Now most of the, so it will be a it's difficult to predict that inventory gain or loss, because it's a combination, because then suppose the prices are going down, there is a tendency among the distributors as well as the purchasers to also keep buying the larger quantity and booking the larger quantity at that point of time for a longer period. So that also plays into this game. So overall, I would say yes, means whenever there is some positive buoyancy, I would put it more, as Abhijit mentioned, is on a commodity, some part of it which gets reflected on these parts. But overall, the risk of large fluctuation has been reduced. On a longer term basis, over 4 to 5 quarters, we will always be average out, because we are now monitoring our each and every exposure very carefully. So we have put up a very robust risk management system of monitoring these what remains in our system on a daily basis.
So it will be marginal because the working capital days has reduced. That's the right understanding?
It will be marginal as compared to what it used to be 2-3 years back. It will be marginal.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Pallav Agarwal from Antique Stock Broking. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. So I had a question on the export tax that Russia has imposed, effective from 1st August to December. So I think Russia exports a lot of nickel into the global market. So with this export tax, do you think the cost curve will go up, and this can actually ultimately benefit our margins in the long run?
So nothing to do with Russia for us as such, because we don't buy any nickel from Russia, or maybe less than 1%. So Russia factor will not impact us, but yes, because of these news coming out, with China also putting an export duty on nickel pig iron, there will be an increase in nickel prices. That we will see, yes.
So nickel line for us is mostly a pass-through, or there be some impact on the inventory that we hold?
It is a pass-through with little time lag, but it is a pass-through.
Okay. So just one more question on the merger. So once I think there's some intercorporate debt that is there between the two entities. So when the merger happens, this will be knocked off. But how will the loans and advances be treated in Jindal Hisar? So will there be a complete elimination of the intercompany debt, or how will the restated pro forma balance sheet look like?
So you rightly mentioned about that. So in terms of if I talk about the two listed companies in terms of that, so one is we are showing as the receivable, which is given to the from Jindal Stainless Hisar Limited to the Jindal Stainless Limited. So one is on the borrowing side, it is appearing, and another is the receivable side. So when this NCLT approval will come, and when we will be presenting the merged balance sheet, so this will be squared up between the two things as a single merged entity.
Sure, sir. And how, the exchange ratio is there, but I believe there are some, again, intercompany shareholding. So, it would also help if you could give us some idea of the, the merged, what would be the, the share capital broadly of the merged entity.
The merged entity share capital will be 84.63 crore shares.
Sure, sir. Okay. This helps a lot. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, 82.634. Sorry, my bad. 82.34 crore shares.
Okay. This is after eliminating all the, subsidy holding or everything. This will be the final number.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Yeah. Thank you. This helps a lot.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sunil Singhania from Abacus. Please go ahead.
Hi guys. Congratulations to the Anurag and team. Couple of questions. One is, on the taxation side, Jindal Stainless has now 35% tax. I'm talking about provision, whether paid or not, and Jindal Stainless Hisar has 25% tax. On a consolidated basis, what would be the tax provision percentage?
So, Mr. Sunil, that we are in the process of, getting in the NCLT approval stage. So, when we will be combining both the company put together, so we will be, because one is on the lower base and one is the higher base. So, looking at the past losses, what was there and the MAT credit there. So, that position we will be evaluating because we are in the process of the, merging stage. So, we are getting the valuation done by the independent valuer. So, as this process will get complete, so we will be, announcing that what percentage we will be applying to
taxation तो पता होगा ना आपको taxation is.
So you're absolutely right. But in the Finance Act, if I talk about 21-22, so because government has brought some changes there. So as the scheme of the merger which we have announced it, so it is acquisition methods we are following that part. So we are evaluating from that angle. So that's
so now corporate tax is at 25%. So logically it should go down to 25%, right?
Yes, you rightly mentioned. Yes, you're right.
The second thing is on the subsidiaries. Obviously last year, first 2 quarters, we had some stress in the subsidiary. Then the next 2 quarters, Q3 and Q4, all the subsidiaries did very, very well. This quarter also, all the subsidiaries are profit making, but there has been some dip in the Indonesian subsidiary and the Steelway subsidiary in terms of EBITDA. Can you throw some light on how the subsidiaries should be looked at? Because, there will be substantial 400-500 crores of EBITDA coming from these 4 subsidiaries.
So Sunil, Steelway, I will take up first. Steelway basically is only temporary because you see Steelway is catering to the small customers who were the maximum impacted during this lockdown which happened in end April, May. Because they are catering to less than, let's say, 100-ton customers. And they were the ones who had the maximum labor issues, they had to shut shop. So already from Q2 you will see JSSL coming back because all the lockdowns are now over and their customers are also operating again. PTJSI, the issue that we are actually facing is completely due to logistics. PTJSI from an export dependent is serving again Europe and America. And there we are facing huge challenges from a logistic point of view. So the cost of shipping has drastically gone up. We are in talks with all our customers to renegotiate the prices and supply at a higher freight, higher price as well. So Indonesia, getting all positive information from the team there, that customers, because it's a world phenomenon. It is not only dependent or because of one country. So the customers are accepting it and they are increasing prices. So Indonesia should also see an improvement in Q2. But JSSL will definitely come back to its previous levels.
And, coming to the core business, obviously, the company has come a long way from a maker of, stainless steel, which was not exactly completely high grade, to now, spending more resources and producing more precision stainless and other high value added stainless steel. Doesn't that logically mean that our band of EBITDA, which used to be as a company level earlier, should logically, even withstanding the ups and downs in the economy and prices, should have moved up, largely because we are doing more value added? And even this 450 odd crores is towards precision stainless steel and blade steel.
So that definitely, your point is absolutely valid and correct from the SPD point of view. But the challenge, and I would love to invite you or our other investors also to the factory to really get the sense of it, because Hisar, we still want to keep it fully loaded. So that is the challenge that we then face in terms of we might have to produce some low value added segment grades, which overall will bring down our average EBITDA. So from our special products, blade steel, those margins will still increase, but because we're increasing that, we will not be able to cast our wider products to the same extent, and we end up making pata. So that brings down our overall margin EBITDA. So that is the only factor which will bring it down.
Last one question, Abhyuday, about my a little bit of soft corner for the B2C business. You all have created very good products. Why is the push not there in a more aggressive manner on that B2C business, which looks very good, but has been growing rather timidly given the opportunity in India?
So there were some internal challenges which now we are rectifying. We are bringing in more automation, if I can say. We had some labor challenges, some quality challenges because of that, and now we're bringing in further automation. So our efficiency, cost reduction, quality improvement, all those areas we're working on. Along with that, we're coming up with a branding and marketing strategy as well. So yes, we have been lagging behind on the B2C front, but that is the focus, and I'm really focusing on that now. So hopefully next coming quarters you will see an improvement from that side as well.
Thank you. I'm done with my question. Thanks a lot, and best wishes.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nishit Shah from Equitas Investment. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir, and congratulations to the whole team for such fabulous numbers. Sir, I wanted to understand more on the exports market. So, sir, how is the demand there and the realizations going in the exports market? And do we still feel any challenges for exports?
So, export market from a realization margin point of view is actually doing phenomenally well. That is again because of the China factor, that China is trying to export less. So companies with good quality and cost efficiency like us are able to take advantage of that. So from again US, Europe, we see very good margins, despite the fact that there is duty on both these. On India from both these countries. So we still see good demand coming in, and we see margins also being up. What was your second part of the question?
Any challenges for exports?
Only challenge I can say is from a container and shipping perspective, and more in the eastern front. So now to tackle that, what we're doing is we're also targeting JNPT and Mundra port as well to cater to our US customers.
Okay. And sir, my second question will be no. Okay, so all my other questions are answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Jimesh Sanghvi from Principal India. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi sir. Congrats on a good set of numbers. Couple of things. If you can share the breakup of the 200, 300, and the 400 series for probably FY21 and for Q1. And second was on the raw material sourcing. Has there been any shift in the last 2 to 3 years? If we have shifted more towards the stainless steel scrap in terms of our overall raw material or ferronickel, if you can share some data points on that as well.
So I'll take your second question first. In terms of, scrap has always been a clear focus and clear strategy for the company. Again, it is totally depending on market factors and the kind of equipment we have. We can always fluctuate between consuming more ferronickel or scrap. So if you're getting a better price in ferronickel, then we increase the consumption of ferronickel to that extent. But in most cases, and on average, scrap is always you get better discounts. So that is why we operate at almost between 70 to 85% from a scrap ratio perspective. Your first question was on ratio.
So, hi, Jimesh. So in Q1 FY22, if we see in JSL, the series mix was like 200 series 17%, and 300 series was 53%, and 400 was 30%. And whereas in JSHL, it was 37% of 200 series, 46% of 300 series, and 18% of 400 series.
And can you share this number for Q4 as well, for FY21?
Yeah, sure. Can I send it across to you offline?
Sure. And sir, fine, not a problem. Sir, on this stainless steel scrap, as you said, that we consume generally between 70 to 85%. What will be that percentage right now? Will it be more towards the 85% range, or will it be more towards the 70% range?
Currently, if I talk as on day today, it is on the lower side only because again of the shipping issues that we are facing across the globe. But we see that improving and coming back in October. So immediately our scrap ratio will again hit that 85% level. Right now we're at the lower band, you can say.
Okay, so currently we are consuming almost around 25 to 30% of ferronickel. Is that the right assumption?
Yes. Correct, you're right.
Fine, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We would like to remind participants that you may press star 1 to ask a question. The next question is from the line of Pranay Zaveri from J&J Holdings. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. So my first question is, what is the debt as on 30th June of the merged entity, pro forma?
It's less than 2,800. Exact number is 2,789.
So this is long-term, short-term, as well as current maturities.
This is only fund-based debt, long-term as well as short-term. Yes, Miss, you are right. Current maturity, long-term, short-term together.
Okay. And sir, if you can just, and what would be the average blended interest rate?
See, put together working capital, because we have a large working capital lines also, almost close to 4,800 crore. Put together, the blended interest rate is close to 6% utilized, depending on the utilization of those lines.
And if you can just throw some light on the capex number, including the maintenance capex for FY22 and FY23, please.
Pranay, I would request if you go through our presentation, we have given very specifically the capex phasing as well as the detailing. So please, I would say go through that, and if you have any residual question, happy to answer towards it.
Okay, fine. Last question from my side is basically the interest cost for the year, as you were alluding in the last call, would be less than about 400 crores, right? And after this debt reduction in Q1, it will be still further lower.
It will be further lower. Last time, yes, you are right, we are guided less than 400. Probably it will be less than 375 or maybe 350, I think. But still less than 375, what we can guide now.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The last question is from the line of Vishal Jaju from Tata Investment Corporation. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. My question was in the B2C business, sir, the Jindal Lifestyle. As far as I understand, we have two major customers. One is the railways and second is Whirlpool. So what plans we have with regard to addition of more clients? And secondly, in Whirlpool, do we supply to Whirlpool India or Whirlpool worldwide?
We supply actually Whirlpool worldwide, and we are the biggest supplier in a particular segment to them, which is KitchenAid. and already they have asked us to increase the capacity, which is what I was mentioning. We are going for further automation in our plants to increase the output, improve the quality, bring down cost. And already we've added 2 new OEMs in the last year. One is Havells India, other one is Tata Motors for a certain product. Similar line, we are also working to add at least 2 more OEMs in this quarter, and that is our strategy going forward.
And, secondly, sir, I visited some of your store also. So what is the outlook that we have in that particular business over the next 3 years? Because in the last couple of years, there has been a lot of volatility, maybe due to the railway orders or the integral coach factory orders. But where do you see this business scaling up over the next 3 years?
Have any? So let me get back to you exactly, because this is our CEO for the JSL Lifestyle is not here with us, but we see good growth at least to the tune of 15 to 20% coming in the railway business every year. We are adding new equipments. We started supplying sidewall, roof, underframe to the railways. We are planning to expand this facility in our Chennai plant. We have a Chennai service center. Along with the service center, we are planning to expand for our lifestyle business, both for kitchens and for railway business in the south. So we see good growth coming. We are the strongest player in this segment, supplying to railway. So definitely we see at least 15 to 20% growth every year for the next 3 years.
So, sir, one last question from my side. The investments that we would be doing with regard to the automation, plus the new OEMs that we are adding, and the request that has come from Whirlpool to increase the capacity. So, what is the capex plan in this business then?
It's mostly largely what we are planning right now will be currently met by our existing capacity largely. There would be some balancing which will be required, but I think as we move with the order, I think we will be adding some, but it's right now not major capex plan which has been planned out for lifestyle.
Chennai plant will incur some capex definitely. In our existing facility, there will be minimal addition. Chennai plant will incur some capex, not more than, I would say more than 25 to 30 crores.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The last question is from the line of Saket Kapoor from Kapoor & Company. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Dhanyavad sir for giving this opportunity. Sir, firstly, we have seen an inventory built up for both our units. So, what kind of ramp-ups are we seeing for the month of July as we are exiting July? How has this inventory closing down has happened?
So, Saket, we actually have a annual shutdown that is planned for this quarter, which is why inventory build-up was required. That will help us. We have this annual shutdown coming in the month of September. So this inventory will be diluted by then.
Right, sir. And sir, lastly, sir, what the guidance given to us for the EBITDA, what kind of cash flow on a merged entity is expected for this year, and how is the cash going to be utilized? If you could give a framework on the same, sir.
Yeah. So basically, the guidance which we have given is on the EBITDA per ton side, 18 to 20,000. Volume side, what we have guided is probably we'll be doing close to 15 to 20, more towards 20% of overall volume growth in the combined entity. So that put together is the overall EBITDA which we'll be targeting. Interest cost on a cash side, cash outflow side, the scheduled debt repayment which is remaining for this year is close to just 35 crores. And the interest cost which we have already guided is less than 375 crores. So this will be how the maths will stack up.
No, sir. And on the capex front, how much will be the?
Sorry, I missed that. Capex side, as we have mentioned in our presentation also, the annual outflow for the capex, new capex will be close to 1100 crore. And over and above this, there is the sustenance and maintenance capex of which remains in the range of expected in the range of 250 to 300 crores.
Right, sir. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, team, and all the best, sir, for the future.
Thank you. I would now like to hand the conference over to Mr. Vishal Chandra from DAM Capital Advisors for closing comments.
Yeah, thank you very much, Malika. I think we had a lot of investors' queries addressed in this session, and thank you very much to the management team from JSL and JSHL. So I would request Mr. Jindal for his closing comments, please.
Thank you, Vishal. I would like to thank everyone for attending this call and for showing interest in JSL and JSHL. Completion of merger along with slated capacity expansion and better product mix will help us maximize the value for all our stakeholders. I hope we have been able to answer all your questions. Should you need any further clarification or would like to know more about the companies, please feel free to contact our investor relations team. And I can see that there is a lot of interest coming in our subsidiaries. So what I will ask our IR team to do is maybe every quarter we invite one CEO from the subsidiary so that any questions further can be answered. So maybe next quarter we'll invite our lifestyle CEO, and the one after that we can invite our service center CEO to come and answer, because I'm happy to see that there is a lot of interest coming in. So thank you once again for your time, and hope to speak to you in our next call. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of DAM Capital Advisors Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines.